Good morning, everybody. Starting a little late, but let us call to order the June MTA Board Meeting. I cannot start this meeting without welcoming a new board member who's an old friend of many of us, Melva Miller. So, real New Yorker, former CEO of Abney, many other roles, and a great addition to this board. So thank you for joining. We've also welcomed Mr. O'Donnell, starting on Monday. Thank you for being here. Somebody who knows his way around the MTA from a career of service that included in the MTA police, and we're thrilled to have you aboard. So thank you. Thank you. So let's let the games begin. Public comment, folks? Safety announcement. Oh, safety announcement. Never forget that. Go ahead, please.
Your safety is of the foremost importance to the MTA. Therefore, we ask that you listen and adhere to the following instructions. If you witness an emergency, notify emergency personnel in the room and call 911 immediately. Please follow any audible instructions provided through the public address system or visually on screens in the event of an emergency. If an alarm sounds, wait for a public address announcement and follow instructions. If told to go to another floor or to evacuate the building, leave all unessential items behind and use stairwell A just across the main hallway or stairwell B down the hallway past the elevators. If you have a mobility disability or cannot self-evacuate, please proceed to stairwell D or E for assistance by MTA staff or emergency personnel. An automated external defibrillator, AED, for use by trained personnel is in the main hallway just past the elevators. If you need assistance during an evacuation, please tell an MTA staff member or emergency personnel. Thank you and have a safe day.
Okay. Thank you. So back to public comment. Ruby.
Good morning and welcome to MTA's board meeting public comment session. We have 55 members of the public registered to speak today. As a reminder, we ask all public speakers adhere to MTA's rules of conduct and decorum. We will hear 60 minutes of public comment speakers in the room, after which we will have to transition to a separate live recording session. Recorded comments will be distributed to the MTA board and posted to our board meeting webpage and YouTube channel. I would also like to remind our public speakers that in the interest of time and fairness to all speakers, we'll limit everybody to 2 minutes. Please be aware that there will be a warning beep to remind you that you have 30 seconds to conclude your remarks. Our first speaker is Chris Greif, followed by John Padula.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Christopher D. Greif, AD, President of the AD Accessibility Transportation Group. Next month is Disability Prime Month, celebrates their 10th year. ADA 35, as we celebrate great things in the future. But let's look at the past. 6 years ago, we are getting a lot of things accomplished, updating our accessibility. For seniors and disabilities, veterans, not just the bridge and tunnels, the railroads, the buses, accessorized, but we are getting done. But our future means we still got to continue advocating for accessibility. And I thank the MTA, and I thank everyone who's been advocating for accessibility. Also, just to say, it is hot outside. You know, the old saying is telling people, if you can't stand it, get out of the kitchen. But to remind everyone that, you know, I'm glad there are some announcements saying, please do not run. It is very hot. But at the same time, also we got to remember that there are some things we have to still continue advocating. It's not just here, but we have to remind our elected officials today and future, as well as the Disability Prime Month, that we need to continue advocating, updating our buses, accessorized stations with elevators and ramps, and making sure that proper lighting, updating our technology to make sure it's fully accessible. I want to wish everyone a happy Disability Prime Month and happy 4th of July. Thank you.
Our next speaker is John Padula, followed by Iris Kelly.
There we go. All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John Padula. I'm Supervisor of Educational Services from New York City Public Schools, as well as a member of the Advisory Committee for Transit Accessibility. Jano, ladies and gentlemen of the board, I come here every month to talk about the importance of accessibility. And not just for the blind kids that I provide oversight for, but for all of our city's disabled children. And why? Because transportation still remains a barrier to employment. The statistics are grim. I can tell you in blindness, we've been bucking a 70% unemployment rate for as long as I can remember. And at 47 years old, I am not a spring chicken at this point. 70% unemployment rate. So, I have to ask leadership my famous question. Could you live your life if confronted with a sudden disability? And I hope it doesn't happen. But could you live your life in such a predetermined, scheduled fashion, every move, 1 to 2 days in advance to the minute, no spontaneity, no flexibility, and to add insult to injury, 30 minutes late is still deemed on time? Accessoride was the red-headed stepchild of the city for years. Thank God that's no longer the case. Things are getting better. The needle has been moving. We need to do more. But we need to invest. Is this board, is leadership ready to invest in a modern, usable, ethical paratransit that will support gainful employment in this city? At the end of the day, more people working, more people spending money, more taxes are being paid. It's a good thing for our city. It's a good investment. Invest in our city's disabled, because equitable paratransit will support gainful employment. It's the right thing to do. Never mistake disability for inability.
Please
And
conclude
don't forget,
your remarks.
low expectations lead to low outcomes.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Iris Kelly, followed by Michael Ring.
Hi, my name's Kelly. In terms of things I have to travel is, first of all, the railroad. There's a lot of problems between Manhattan and Brooklyn connections, which is not right. For instance, at nighttime, on Monday nights you have at 10:10, and New York 10:04 would come in. They give enough time to cross over. But on a Tuesday night, you give it 10:04 for your train and my train. You could pull out, pulling out. That's not good, because I have to wait another half hour for the next train out, which is a disgrace. You need more connecting time. You're going from week 2 all the way down the Africa, go to the track 12. Now for the Accessoride, they need to have a way you can be able to change your trip on the same day if you have an emergency come up. For instance, every day I go the same time every morning, my job. But then the one day I have a doctor's appointment in the area a block away, and I want to change it to a little later time to need more time, but they don't allow it because the second trip. It should not matter which trip you're taking, first or second trip. It should not matter. And also now with the on-demand, they should ask the clientele if they want to be able to use it, not you picking people who you want. There's people out there who really need it. They don't even have it. I can't go to my sister's house because they plan things this last minute. I can't go to their house because of that. 1-2 days before I book anything to go there. And then for the transit, for buses, they need to put all of them on auto, on voice, just so you know what stop you're getting off that. I went to a fundraiser, and I was supposed to get to 13th Avenue. Keep asking what avenue was on, and it was 14th Avenue. I had to go back another block just to get where I had to go. This shouldn't be happening. Thank you.
Next speaker is Michael Ring, followed by Miriam Fisher.
Good morning. My name is Michael Ring. If anyone needs a verbal description of my appearance, I'm a 62-year-old white guy, need a shave, wearing a T-shirt that says this DIA, Disabled in Action. That is the organization I'm representing today. Jano, I noticed you using a cane. I'm sorry to see that. Hope it's temporary, but welcome to our world. What I wanted to talk about is that this meeting, this building, New York City, would not exist. It's a vertical city. We need elevators. We can all get up to this meeting on the 20th floor without worrying about it, without thinking about it. Spontaneously, there's redundant elevators. They all work. One might not be working. You don't have to even know about it. The goal for the subway, so that people who can't use stairs to get places, should be to make the subways and the buses that reliable, that you could leave when you want, get to where you want to going, and be a productive member of society. The goal of 95% accessible in 30 years is wonderful, but just having one elevator in every station or most station is only the beginning. I know it's massively expensive, but that needs to be a goal, to work towards seamless transportation for people who can't walk up and down stairs, just like it is in all our office buildings in the city. Thanks a lot.
Our next speaker is Miriam Fisher, followed by Jack Nierberg.
Can you hear me?
So we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. To the MTA, please sign the elevator maintenance case. It's 8 years long. Monday, June 23rd. The other day, 45 elevators were out. Outages strand riders with disabilities, parents with strollers, seniors, people with luggage. We need to sign the case. Bus stops, applaud better bus service. Plans for Queens, 34th Street, 42nd Street, Madison Avenue. But we also need better bus stops with seats, shelter from the weather. We don't want to wait in 100-degree heat like today for the next bus. In the winter, wait 20 minutes in the snow. We need better bus stops, pregnant women, seniors, kids, people with disabilities. Announcements of elevator outages so people can plan ahead and not get stranded. And on the subway cars, platform, digital displays where now we can see when the next train is coming, which I certainly appreciate. Washington, D.C. has similar screens, but with the next train, but also announces elevator outages. The technology is possible, and it's something that we could use as a model in New York City. Thank you for listening.
Our next speaker is Jack Nierenberg, followed by Jason Anthony.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Jack Nierenberg. I'm the Vice President of Passengers United, and we're only 4 days away from the implementation of Phase 1 of the Queens Bus Network redesign, but still no word about how this promotional transfer policy will actually work. And I had a conversation with New York City Transit President Critchlow last month, and I was deeply concerned by what I was told. I was told that people who would have to take 2 buses and a subway, or a subway and 2 buses, would not be included as part of this promotional transfer policy. And there was no indication as to whether they would be part of the study going forward for the discounted routes or the promotional free transfer routes. That seems like a pretty brazen oversight, and I really hope that this was inaccurate information. And because it would leave the many thousands of people out of the equation. And if they're not part of the study, we end up with a solution that does not represent how Queens riders actually commute and will be commuting once the redesign actually goes into effect. And speaking of the study, I want to make something very, very clear. The promotional transfer policy only applies to Omni, but that's as far as the language goes. However, there's a pretty sizable amount of the population that still uses Metro cards and have not been able to switch over to Omni. Those people need to be included in the study as well, along with people who use Nice Bus and are using Metro cards to transfer from the MTA to Nice Bus and vice versa. They need to be part of the study as well. And also, in addition to the routes that are being designated, people who have to take a rush route and have to transfer to a local route, those routes should automatically be free. There should be no additional transfer. No one should be paying additional fares. Please make that happen. We don't want to have to take more drastic action. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jason Anthony, followed by Philip Valenti from TW Local 106.
Good morning, everybody. Jason Anthony, the transit guru, on the Wednesday after his 39th birthday. Let's talk about a little bit about rolling stock. This past Monday, we learned that new trains are coming in, the M9s and more Auto 11s. We know that we are under a heat wave, the first one this season. But as an Amazon worker that I am, I work in harsh conditions. But yesterday, we saw a massive signal outage in two different lines, on the Broadway and on the crosstown. Let's not forget some fact checking for those that are here in the room, that Fair Fares is managed by the city, not by the MTA. That's a state entity. So go to City Hall, Gracie Mansion, the City Council, etc. Not the MTA, that's a state entity. But I want to thank the newest board member, James O'Donnell, for welcoming me with open arms and thanking me for my wonderful speech on Monday. And I know that Jano's listening to my speeches like every month. Thank you, Jano, for the wonderful work that you do every day, and I hope that you recover from your accidents. And I totally appreciate the work that you do every single day, as well as Demetrius, Rob, and Justin. So that's all I have for this month. Thank you very much.
Speaker is Philip Valenti, followed by Anna Humphrey.
Philip Valenti, President of TW Local 106 Transit Supervisors. I have two issues. We represent all MS2s in the Department of Subways. In March, 4 MS2 stations maintenance submitted resumes to transfer to 4 open MS2 positions for quality assurance. The reason was better pay and easier work. All 4 were passed over for these jobs and not given an interview. Instead, the 4 MS1s were promoted up into these positions. I contacted you, Mr. President. You told me to speak to Vice President Solomon. I negotiated a contract language with you, and it's not being followed. I spoke to Mr. Solomon about this, or the union spoke to Solomon about this, and his answer was the reason why these 4 MS2s were not promoted was because there were typos on their resumes, and the reason why they wanted the promotion, he heard, was because there was more overtime and it was an easier position. So we filed a complaint with Special Investigations, and Solomon's answer to that was he feels very comfortable, but Miranda Grant will handle the investigation. So here's what I know. Anytime a supervisor in a union sends a complaint to SIR, it's dead on arrival. We don't get an answer. We don't get an answer and nothing happens. So what am I supposed to do? I come to you as a president, and to get satisfaction, I ask for the supervisors to give it another opportunity for you to look at the situation again and give these guys the positions they applied for. Again, I'm also asking you for the ability for all MS2s to transfer into other positions. I want an agreement on that. Also, there's an issue with EEO. Second, there's an issue with EEO and SAR. We have people sitting in the rubber room for 6 months and 3 months, and their cases are not being heard. They're getting no overtime. They're sitting there losing their minds. Something's got to be done to fix these people sitting in the rubber room for 6 months. And
Please conclude your remarks.
Thank you.
Thank you. As a reminder, speakers shall address the remarks to the chair and shall not make personal statements about any member of the MTA board or staff or about the members of the public. Our next speaker is Anna Humphrey, followed by Joe Rappaport.
Good morning. My name is Anna Humphrey, and I'm the Transportation Community Organizer for the Center for Independence of the Disabled, New York, Sydney. I'm here today to urge the MTA once again to immediately settle the elevator maintenance case. Each month on a Monday morning, disability rights advocates gather outside this building to remind the MTA that we're not going away. It's a shame that 8 years have passed since this case was filed, but we have not backed down. The waste of MTA financial resources is demonstrated in the numerous attorneys that you have employed to fight a basic human right. The human right is to live in a city which provides an accessible transportation system to all. Accessibility is not a nuisance to be ignored or litigated away. We will continue to fight for the independence of the disability community and for all New Yorkers who need working elevators. Investing in regular and ongoing elevator maintenance is about building a subway system that works for everyone. This comprises people with disabilities, parents with strollers, delivery workers, travelers with luggage, and anyone who might face a temporary mobility injury. In short, it is about creating a system that works for all of us on both sides of this room. We urge the MTA to stop wasting money on attorneys and use these funds to maintain the system. New Yorkers want a system that is dependable and reliable. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Joe Rappaport, followed by Trammell Thompson.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm Joe Rappaport from the Brooklyn Center for Independence of the Disabled. 3 years ago this month, we celebrated the MTA's agreement to finally make subway stations accessible. This was a long-fought battle and a real triumph for disabled New Yorkers, for the MTA, and for all New York. And so far, to your credit, you have put in elevators all around the city. Communities with people long shut out of our subways benefit. There's a lot more work to do, but you're making progress. We applaud you. But it's not all good news. Back in 2022, when we settled our case, we had hoped to settle a third case, we had hoped to settle a third case about the maintenance of subway elevators. Our goals are a simple standard for performance and for a reasonable way of getting information out so people who need those elevators don't end up stuck in a station. We want the elevators to be kept clean. These are not heavy lifts. We thought the MTA would want to elevate itself by having strict standards for performance. We thought the doors were open for real progress. But 3 years later, here we are, our case continues. The MTA will tell you that they've already won, but we're still in court. They'll tell you as well they don't have to set performance standards, as other cities, Boston, San Francisco, have done. But why wouldn't you set those standards? It's not because we're a 24-hour system and they're not. It's New York. Come on, you can do it. There are no standards because you refuse to hold yourself to account. And that is the point of the lawsuit. We urge you as board members to ask some tough questions about why this case hasn't been settled. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Trammell Thompson, followed by Allison Filosa.
Chairman Lieber, the other day, 2 weeks ago, a conductor got slashed in the face. Unfortunately, slashings and stabbings for conductors and other employees is equivalent to an NYPD officer getting shot. When an NYPD officer get harmed in that fashion, they hear from their commissioner. How come we don't hear from you as the chairman? Because y'all have equivalent titles, right? Now, I bet you if Kathy Hochul was to get a paper cut in the Bronx where she said black kids don't know what the word computer is, I'm quite sure that you would call her 3 times a day to make sure that she is okay. You could make these faces all you want. But it's hard to find empathy in this building between the 13th floor labor relations and the 30th floor where you at. Now, I see got a lot of MTA police officers here. The same MTA police officers you refuse to put in New York City Transit. And they look pretty bored up here. Now, the last time I came to your house, you was going a little crazy. And normally downstairs, I put a casket downstairs for our assault rallies. Guess where that casket is going to go next? You guessed right. For your neighbors to see. For the kids when they go to school to camp this summer. They're going to see that. And they're going to ask why. Because you don't care if we get assaulted. Because you're not doing nothing but putting out presses out there and talking with no action. We want to see you care for the workers, for the employees, something that you have not done. You go out, you do these presses, and it's good for print, but where's the action? We don't come to work to get slashed. We don't come to work to get stabbed. You got to do something about this. And maybe you too busy. Maybe you saying too many workers getting assaulted and I don't have the time to call them. Or maybe you simply don't care. But you got to show us something moving forward, or that casket will go be in front of you.
Please conclude your remarks. Thank you. Our next speaker is Allison Filosa, followed by Jose Darras.
Hi, I'm a resident of Newburgh, and I wanted to express how integral the ferry is to our community. We rely on the ferry to connect us to the Beacon Metro North Station, And without the ferry, we are left with little reliable transportation options. The Beacon Pier was damaged this winter, leaving service suspended with no schedule given for repair, and the lack of transparency has left the public and Newburgh City Council little time to react to a very consequential decision for commuters. We're asking that at this time that you pay attention to the transportation needs of Newburgh and reinstate the ferry for all commuters to have safe access to get to the Metro North Station in Beacon. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Jose Deras, followed by Deborah Greif.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Jose Deras. I am the president of the MTA Police Guardians Association. We are a fraternal organization representing the majority of Black police officers in the MTA Police Department. I'm here to address the lack of Black representation within the MTA Police Department in both hiring and in specialized units. Last week, we celebrated Juneteenth, and we are 5 years removed from the murder of George Floyd. Police agencies across the region, including NYPD, Nassau County, and Suffolk County, have made significant efforts to recruit more Black candidates. Yet, MTA still operates like a good old boy network and engages in racial gatekeeping. Today, fewer than 6% of MTA police officers are Black, while roughly 40% of MTA workers are Black. Several specialized units do not even have a Black member or have never had a Black person working in them. MTA leadership is aware of all this disparity. However, all they want to do is have meetings after meetings and hire more of their friends and relatives. The status quo is unacceptable. Chairman Lever, we look for your leadership in addressing this problem. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Deborah Greif, followed by Shane Kennedy.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Deborah Greif, and I'm here today for a reason. Now, I'm holding this is my benefit card. It's signed to me from HRA, as well as SSI and Social Security. But why am I saying something? Because I'm tired of every time I come to the board meeting, have protesters downstairs about fair fares. Now, why am I upset? They're at the wrong building. I think as a fact, since Fair Fares was set up by, under then former Mayor Bill de Blasio, you need to go up to City Hall. They do not need to be here. And they need to go to the City Council. They need to go to the head of HRA, but not here. Because MTA did not set up Fair Fares. Because if you did, you would have done it way better than they did for this reason. We, who are senior citizens and met the criteria for income, would probably have been given the reduced fare for accessory. Yes, the day I turned 65, even though I was qualified to get fair fares, I wasn't going to do it for 1 month to go for $1.45 back to $2.90. We pay $2.90. So anybody here protesting for fair fares, go take the train downstairs or go walk up to City Hall and protest there. It's their fault, not here. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Shane Kennedy, followed by Victor Diaz-Rodriguez.
Good morning. My name is Shane, and I'm here to endorse the Fair Ain't Fair campaign. So working class New Yorkers are experiencing an unaffordability crisis which cannot be understated. Housing, food, healthcare, and transit are rapidly becoming more and more expensive, and attacks on social services are increasing every year. Because of these compounding costs, within the next few years alone, the number of New Yorkers struggling to afford the fare could potentially double from 20% as it is currently to 40%. The MTA's capital plan states that fare evasion has been growing steadily in the last 5 years and now poses an existential threat to the financial viability of the MTA. To say that fare evasion is the root of funding shortages ignores the decreasing ability of riders to afford the fare. This is not an issue which can be fixed with any amount of evasion-resistant gates or legions of police and guards. Denying service to riders who are unable to pay does not increase fare revenue. It only destroys lives. Following this board's current strategy, year after year, a diminishing ridership base will be made to pay an expanding margin of the operating budget for the same service. All the while, the MTA's reputation will continue to plummet, and confrontations with its staff and police will increase. Is this addressing the problem or just kicking the can? To solve the MTA's existential threat, it must shift funding away from fare and towards taxation on the businesses who rely on its services to transport their workers. We demand reduced fare for those making under 400% of the federal poverty level. Fare must be based on income and could follow progressive brackets from no cost to standard cost. The MTA board must come to realize that the poor have nothing left to take and that the only path to continued operation is through budget reform. The fare ain't fair and the poor won't pay more.
Our next speaker is Victor Diaz-Rodriguez, followed by Naomi Herson Ringskog.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Victor Diaz-Rodriguez. I'm the filmmaker behind All Riders, the PBS documentary short about the fight for accessibility in the subway. I want to start by thanking and applauding the members of this board for the hard work you've done so far on accessibility. Our system is really old, so it's not easy to retrofit so many stations with all the complexities. I want to thank my friend Q Arroyo, who was instrumental in securing the accessibility funding for the Future Capital program. Jano, I want to thank your leadership. You come from the development world, so you know how important delivering is. Now, let's be real, folks. Talking about black budgets and state of good repair is just not very appealing for getting people's attentions and especially getting politicians involved. And Jano, you get it. You understand that politicians love ribbon cuttings, whether they're in Albany or in City Hall. So here's the deal. Visibility is key, and nothing says job well done like a ribbon cutting. Now, I'm not here to just sing your praises. The elevator replacements need to be faster. They can't be this slow, and I hope that the know-how accumulated with each elevator replacement contributes to a smoother process. Second, wayfinding needs to improve, and I know everyone here, knows that, but not just from the perspective of disabled folks. I suggest boosting the open data program. Let's tap into the best minds this city and this great country have to offer. And finally, I think the MTA really needs to improve its communication with the public. I'm a storyteller. I make documentary films. That's my MO. Now, it's not new that the MTA has a public relations problem. I don't see any of you as adversaries. I know everyone here wakes up in the morning and wants to make the city run better, wants to make the subways and the buses and everything else work better. So I just think that you guys need to think a little bit more about what story you want to tell about this building and the relations you have with the public. Thank you very much, and God bless.
Our next speaker is Naomi Herson Ringskog, followed by Chikon An. We will go to Chikon An, followed by Milo Ward.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sheko An. I'm a community health worker with Bronx Health Reach. Bronx Health Reach, founded in 1999, is a community coalition of more than 80 members committed to eliminating racial and ethnic health disparities in the Bronx. We were a key partner in the grassroots coalition that worked to remove alcohol advertising from the MTA to protect children and youth, especially those from our most vulnerable communities. The Bronx has some of the worst rate of chronic disease and condition in New York. In fact, it is ranked 62 out of New York State's 62 counties in health outcomes and health factors. This includes high blood pressure and heart disease. Alcohol consumption makes these problems worse. Alcohol is a risk factor for high blood pressure, itself the leading risk factor for heart disease. The World Heart Federation found that even small amount of alcohol can increase a person's risk for cardiovascular disease, including coronary disease, stroke, and heart failure. Also, according to American Cancer Society, alcohol use is also a major risk factor for several types of cancer, including female breast cancer, colorectal cancer, and liver cancer. As someone who works closely with immigrant communities, I'm especially concerned that young people from cultures that traditionally don't use alcohol will be drawn into underage drinking by aggressive alcohol marketing. We call on the MTA to rethink the policy's reversal and do what's right for the children and youth of the Bronx and the rest of the countries that MTA serves. Thank you for your attention.
Our next speaker is Milo Ward, followed by Naomi Herson.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I am a substance misuse prevention professional, and I'm here to speak today about the proposed change to the MTA's policy restricting alcohol advertising in the transit system. In January of 2025, the Surgeon General put out a report showing that alcohol consumption is linked to 7 different types of cancers. Like tobacco, science has established that there is no safe amount of alcohol consumption. Exposure to alcohol advertising increases the likelihood of both youth and adults that they will engage in alcohol consumption. Traditional alcohol advertising, just like the strategies being proposed by the MTA, are strongly associated with early age of alcohol use and are hazardous. And binge drinking among underage persons in particular is especially harmful. Importantly, the early age of alcohol initiation is associated with the development of an alcohol use disorder later in life. And so while I agree it's important for the MTA to have sustainable streams of funding, it should not come at a cost to public health. The MTA needs to consider the potential public health risks associated with alcohol-related harms before making any decisions related to changing this policy. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Naomi Herson, followed by Christian Joseph.
Good morning. My name is Naomi Herson-Brinkskog. I'm a resident of Newburgh, New York. I'm also former chair of Newburgh Transportation Committee. It's wonderful to see Mr. O'Donnell join the board and wonderful to be here. I'm speaking in favor of the ferry. It's correct. It had low attendance. This was mainly because of the schedule that was very limiting, as well as the no marketing and advertisement. So many people didn't know about it. I find the discontinuation of the ferry as opportunistic. There has not been any kind of concerted effort to improve it, to pilot other schedules or even weekend ferry, but it doesn't have to be that way. The Transportation Committee worked with the Newburgh Beacon Bridge Authority, on the Newburgh Beacon Bridge curfew in 2020 and lifted the curfew on the bike and pedestrian walkway. We should, together with Orange County and Dutchess County and the MTA, strive to create a multimodal system that integrates bus, ferry, and walkability. You'll hear today from many people that walk and enjoy it for both commuting as well as recreational access. This is an important time in the Mid-Hudson region. Our tourism is boosting, and we need to have ferry systems that are both serving commuters as well as visitors on the weekdays and weekends. There's a lot more that has to be unearthed. We pay into the MTA tax system, so let's work together on this effort. And if you look at the Facebook and Instagram comments, you'll see many people don't know about this. So it's a real lost opportunity. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Christian Joseph, followed by Lashane Lindsay.
Hello, my name is Christian Joseph. I'm here to represent the Fair Ain't Fair campaign. We're in the midst of an affordability crisis. Over the past 5 years, groceries have increased in cost by about 20 to 25%. Over the past 6 years, childcare has increased by over 40 to 50%. And a January 2024 report by the State Comptroller's Office claims that rent has risen by over 50%. Transportation is yet another one of the basic necessities needed to live in this city. And the fare raise in August is unacceptable, knowing the conditions that poor and working people are enduring in this city. I understand that the board and the MTA uses ridership as one of its metrics of success. While pricing people out of being able to ride the subway is not a way to meet those metrics. In addition, I see that within your plan, you all have a renewed contract with BlackRock, also coming up in August, and that you're $48 billion in debt to a number of financial institutions. This MTA, the public transportation of this city, should be serving working and poor people that are the lifeblood of this city, and should not be some sort of financial scheme of bonds to be made in the benefit of financiers and Wall Street. So again, $3 in August is unacceptable. Poor and working people are suffering. We're in an affordability crisis. You have the choice to make the right decision. Do you serve the richest, or do you serve the people that matter in this city?
Please conclude your remarks. Thank you. Our next speaker is LaShawn Lindsay, followed by Monica Atley.
Good morning, board members. My name is LaShawn Lindsay. I'm the New York organizing manager with Jobs to Move America. We work to ensure our public money creates quality, family-sustaining jobs. I'm here today to renew a call we made to the chair and the board to release the information the MTA's contractor, Kawasaki, was required to provide about the wages of workers producing subway cars for the agency's multi-billion-dollar rail car contract. As mentioned in this month's capital program committee book, the R211 project budget is now at $5 billion after MTA exercised option 2 in the contract with Kawasaki. They also reported a series of mechanical problems with the most recent deliveries of R211s. We are concerned that the lack of public oversight over the workmanship at Kawasaki facilities could result in compromised product quality. A U.S. DOT-approved procurement policy, the U.S. Employment Plan, incentivizes manufacturers receiving public money to be high-road manufacturers by detailing jobs created, wages, benefits, and related training in the USEP worksheet. I'm glad the MTA required Kawasaki to fill out the USEP worksheet as part of its R211 contract. As part of the worksheet requirements, Kawasaki is supposed to regularly report on the number of full-time positions as well as the wages and benefits of their employees. But it is concerning to know that the MTA is protecting Kawasaki and keeping the public, even the workers themselves, in the dark about what it committed to and how it's fulfilling or not fulfilling these commitments. We want to see public dollars create family-sustaining jobs, but these policies don't work if there's no public transparency in the contract and no way for the public to hold them accountable. I urge the board to respond to the New York State legislators, unions, and watchdog groups in order that the U.S. Employment Plan and related documents be released without redaction. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Monica Ite, followed by Lawrence Johnson.
Good morning. My name is Monica Bartley, and I am a member of DIA, but today I'm here speaking on behalf of the Interfaith Public Health Network. We're deeply disappointed that the MTA has backtracked on its commitment to protect youth from alcohol advertising. When the MTA board unanimously voted to add alcohol to the list of prohibited advertising categories in October of 2017, an MTA board member remarked that our campaign was evidence that MTA leadership was responsive to community concerns. By contrast, this functional reversal of the alcohol advertising policy has been a largely internal MTA process with no substantive opportunity for community input. It is difficult to avoid the conclusion that this lack of community involvement was intentional. During our grassroots campaign, we noted that Outfront, in its business-to-business marketing materials, bragged about its ability to reach a captive audience, including students. It continues to do this. What has changed is the capacity of Outfront and its data partners to utilize digital surveillance marketing techniques to target young people at the individual level. This is troubling enough for benign products and services, but especially troubling when these ads are for health-harming products like alcohol, junk food, and sugary beverages. Accordingly, we request that the MTA board hold off on any changes to the MTA alcohol advertising policy. until a more thorough analysis of potential harms can be undertaken. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Lawrence Johnson, followed by Omar Vera.
Good morning. My name is Lawrence Johnson. I am with the Fair Ain't Fair campaign. I do want to affirm that we are in the right place. We protested downstairs this morning because we know we're in the right place, and we just didn't protest downstairs this morning. We've been all over the city. We've been talking to people in all communities. We've been at City Hall, and when we say that there's an affordability crisis, we know there's an affordability crisis because the statistics bear it, but the people we talk to, they express it. So when we have these board meetings, most of the people who would express the desperation coming from this unaffordability crisis, they're not here, they're at work, or they're in other places trying to survive. But we need for you all to understand what an unaffordability crisis entails, right? This morning, Darrell Mickles, who was shot at the Sutter Avenue train station in Brownsville last year, is on trial because he was a fare evader, and the way that we deal with people who are facing a crisis situation, we turn them into criminals, right? We cannot criminalize poverty. People are evading fares because they can't afford it. They're not criminals, they're people. If we create criminal conditions and back it up with policies, then this board, along with all the other boards in the city, are contributing to the problem as opposed to implement leadership to solve the problem. So we're in the right place. The question for you all is, who are you all speaking to really get a grasp on what this affordability crisis really is? Who are you talking to? So maybe next month, in the months that follow, you all could tell us who you all talk to, because we're all over the city talking to people, and this affordability crisis is dangerous, right? So we have to do something about a dangerous situation. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Omar Vera, followed by Moyam Tam.
Good morning, MTA Board. Welcome to the June edition of the board meeting in the heat wave. So like I said Monday, you should really revise the Queens Bus redesign plan and have the original plan, which is for the Q50 to be extended to LaGuardia Airport to bring more direct transit service between the airport and the Bronx. And yes, like I said, we also need a system that, you said that you promised to make a system that's 95% accessible by 2055 or something like that. That's what I read somewhere. But like I said, you just gotta keep with the program. Keep with the program. We need better service. That's what we need. And last but not least, I would like to reiterate, Andrew said this time and again before, to modify the Rockaway service plan. C train on Lefferts Boulevard, A servicing the Rockaways, Rockaway Park Far Rockaway pattern, and relegate the Rockaway Park shuttle to late nights only. I'm going to keep pushing for that until that becomes a reality. With that said, thanks for here, and keep with the congestion pricing program. We need to stay firm and keep the program that's been proven to be very successful so far. But in any case, have a great night and a good day, and happy summer.
Our next speaker is Moyan Tom, followed by Jean Ryan.
Good morning, board members. I'm Moyan Tom, New York Policy Manager with Jobs to America, or JMA. We work to ensure public money creates family-sustaining jobs. As labor advocates working with key unions, we urge the MTA to adopt the U.S. Employment Plan, or USEP, the upcoming procurement of 2,000 rail cars in the 2025-2029 capital plan. The MTA has a crucial opportunity to not only invest in our public transit infrastructure, but also to invest in the people and communities who build it. The USEP is a federally approved policy tool. Transit agencies can customize the USEP and require bidders to disclose the number, type, and location of jobs the contract will create and retain, as well as salaries, benefits, and training programs, and their plan to recruit and train historically marginalized workers. MTA rightly acknowledges and promotes the jobs generated from its investments. For example, the MTA cited the Ernst & Young economic impacts of the MTA's 2025-2029 capital plan that noted for every $1 billion spent on new rail cars within New York State, nearly 900 average jobs are created. In addition, the MTA noted during the Monday's Finance Committee that the M9A railcar purchase will create hundreds of jobs in New York, as well as in 18 states through the supply chain. In order to ensure these billion-dollar investments in new railcars create good jobs in New York and other impacted states, the USEP would incentivize railcar manufacturers to share the wages, benefits, and training they will provide. This would allow the MTA to evaluate these bids for the quality of the jobs they could create. Also, the MTA can incentivize railcar manufacturers to locate in New York in order to earn more points in the bid process. The MTA should not miss out on the opportunity to create good jobs throughout the rail sector. JMA looks forward to working with the MTA to ensure the investment in new railcars contributes to New York's economic growth and creates community-sustaining jobs in New York and throughout the country. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jean Ryan, followed by Jack Connors.
Hi, my name is Jean Ryan, and I'm president of Disabled in Action of Metropolitan New York, DIA for short. I'm here to talk about getting around New York and how hard it is for people with disabilities. The subway is the fastest and easiest way to get around as long as you live somewhere and are going to a station that's somewhat near you. But with the spotty nature of the accessible stations and the inaccessibility due to elevators out of commission and us not knowing where the elevators are, if one is not working, we don't know where to go after that, especially if we're going to a new place. So we want you to settle the elevator maintenance case and stop paying so much for lawyers and stalling. And that leads me to the other thing. So how do we get around if I rode subways for 25 years. I had to stop when I became disabled. So I know they're fast. But so how do we get around? Well, one way is by buses, but if you want to go from one borough to another on the express bus, you can't do it reliably in a wheelchair, because you never know if they're going to pick you up, if they know what they're doing, or if the drivers can even move the seats so you have a space inside to park your wheelchair. And so it's like a crapshoot trying to take the express bus. And I've been taken off the bus by the fire department when the lift stopped working. So that's not fun. It's dangerous. So we need a different design of the express bus, and also we need an expansion of the e-hail on demand through Express
Please conclude your remarks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jack Connors, followed by Marlo Swalsville.
Good morning. I'm Jack Connors, Research and Communications Associate at the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA PCAC. As we approach the summer's fare increase, we're hoping that the business-like mindset that embodies the new MTA will be reflected in fare policies that do right by riders and allow the MTA to expand its customer base, particularly in subway deserts. PCAC's ideas include AM peak discounts for senior, disabled, and Medicare-eligible riders on the LIRR and Metro North, a discounted fare for 12 to 17-year-olds on the railroads, a weekly city ticket that includes free transfers to subways and buses, and pushing the city to expand fare fares to 200% of the federal poverty level and the railroads. These policies are about fairness for riders, making the system cheaper for families and those on fixed incomes. But it's also about your bottom line. City Ticket is a proven financial success. It's boosted ridership at Bronx Metro North stations as much as 166% above pre-COVID levels, and within the LIRR city terminal zone by 24%. Thanks to investments from Governor Hochul and the legislature, there are over 300 new M9As coming to the railroads and record on-time performance. Let's capitalize by offering more fare options for riders in subway deserts instead of forcing them into three-leg transfers, dollar vans, and worst of all, single occupancy vehicles. We should look towards authorities like SEPTA, far less resourced than the MTA. that added most regional rail stations to its weekly bus and subway pass at no additional cost 2 years ago. Such joint railroad New York City transit trips cost as much as $20 on the MTA. These ideas are not far-fetched. They were informed by conversations with many of you at this board table to ensure their practicality. And they're supported by dozens of elected officials and organizations from the Business Council to Reinvent Albany. Strange bedfellows. We're also happy to see that as a result of our recent Omni survey, that riders agree with us overwhelmingly. They want more transfers and better.
Please conclude your remarks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Marlo Swasville, followed by Dominic X.
Good morning. My name is Marlo. I'm a member of the Party for Socialism and Liberation and an endorser of the Fair Fares campaign. And I'm here because I want to follow up on a comment made last month after my testimony here at this board. It was claimed that the Fair Fares program threshold is in the mid 30,000s, but it was unclear whether that was referring to the proposed increase or whether that is what it is now, which I think is representative of a broader issue of lack of clarity from the MTA. So I want to go over some actual numbers. Right now, people who qualify for the Fair Fares program at this 145% threshold for single people is $22,690 a year, and for married couples, it is $30,667. A 200% increase would bring it to $31,300 and $46,617 respectively. Now, a full-time minimum wage worker in New York makes $34,320 a year. So even with an increase up to 200%, a minimum wage worker in New York still would not qualify for the Fair Fares program. We attend these meetings monthly because regardless of how the City Council votes on expanding the program, the MTA Board is the one that sets the fares, and that is why we are here to demand that you halt the hikes. It is not about whether or not you impress our organizations. It's about the fact that this board is so disconnected from working class life in this city. It's about the fact that a fare increase affects all of us, including people enrolled on the Fair Fares program. It is about the fact that 20% of New Yorkers can't make ends meet, which is a number on the rise. It's about the fact that the board doesn't deem itself responsible to inform New Yorkers of this increase, leaving us with another unexpected burden. Last time there was news coverage about the fare hike was in December, meaning that there has been no communication from the MTA to the public about this in about 6 months. Shame on this board for leaving working class New Yorkers to be blindsided and to struggle when this city couldn't run
Please
without them.
conclude your remarks.
And we'll be back.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Dominic X.
Peace and good morning. My name is Dominic X. I'm also with the Fair Fares campaign. I am going to mention something that, is another part of our campaign that does attribute to everything that we're speaking of. We're in an affordability crisis. We all understand that. We're hearing that from paying riders that there are issues with dependability, accessibility, and reliability. And there's clearly a clear disconnect between service quality from your paying riders and the provider charges that we see. We see $290 and you're continuing to go up, but is it no coincidence that the fare is going to be increasing in August at the same time that your BlackRock financial contract is going to be increasing, which is also $3 million? We need to make sure that we're using the funds that we're already getting from people who can't afford it to go towards, the things that you need to do. Because otherwise, how are you forcing the poor who can't afford anything in this affordability crisis to pay more for anything when they can't afford it? We mentioned there's the slashing that just happened with a worker, and we mentioned the Darrell Mickles trial. But how greedy is it to continue to make what you make without any losses to continue to push the transit system forward when you're prioritizing profit over safety in the end of the day? And that'll always lead to unsafe conditions for all of your employees, and, who are keeping your system running as your pockets are continuing to be fluffed. This, at the end of the day, is a capitalism issue. I don't believe that we need to continue to raise the fares and continue to take more from our paying, from our city who we deserve. These things are already ours. And like I said, to charge the other, the corporations who are having the jobs, that's making more sense.
Please conclude your remarks.
That makes more sense to me
Thank
than
you.
charging other people.
And our final speaker will be Michael Cohen.
So I was wondering why I have noticed that on the L train and the 7 train and the G train, there's an initiative to install communications-based train control, which will make those lines makes those lines more reliable and reduces delays. So I'm wondering why we can't have a faster implementation of it on the other lines, particularly on the IRT lines, the 456, the 123 lines, and have them also have the technology and have the better signals. Because it would really be an improvement to the subway reliability and reducing, and also increase the number of trains that come, the frequency, the headway of the trains, if the old signal system could be replaced faster. And so I'm wondering why that hasn't been done and why there's not a comprehensive plan to implement new signals and the better signals. Because the difference I noticed is there's a huge difference between how often the train comes on the L and how often it comes on the 456. And I think that really is something that should be included in the next capital plan, creating a roadmap to the implementation of more modern signals.
Thank you. Chair Lieber, we have allotted the time for this public comment session. At this time, we ask the remaining registered speakers to stand by as we transition to a separate live recording session. If you're a remote public speaker participating on Zoom, please stand by and wait for further instructions from the moderator. Public speakers in the room, please join us in conference room 4. Thank you for your cooperation.
Good morning, everybody. Paige, do we have a quorum of the board at this meeting?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Well, we'll get started. Thank you again to the public speakers. Thank you to everybody for joining this month's meeting. Listen, understandably, people are focused on what happened yesterday at the polls. A lot of news there. But I can't help but think about a year ago, where we were last June. It's no secret that we were struggling with the consequences of the pause on congestion pricing, which was, of course, as we all know, later reversed. But at the time, there was a lot of uncertainty about whether the MTA was going to be able to survive financially, whether we were going to be able to sustain the level of service. The pause forced us to rethink our 2020 to 2024 capital program, which depended on funds from congestion pricing. And it made people wonder whether there was going to be any 2025 to 29 capital plan at all. There was uncertainty about our operating budget, which is essential for us to pay our workforce and to actually deliver service, both about the potential impact of the congestion pricing pause on the operating budget, but also about whether we could achieve the $400 million in efficiency savings without cutting service or laying anybody off, God forbid, whether we were going to be able to achieve those efficiency savings which have been promised by us as part of the prior year deal in order to keep the MTA from going over the post-COVID fiscal cliff. And it was also unclear if we were going to be able to continue our upward trend in ridership and safety and service. But let me tell you, and the board needs to, we had a healthy public comment session focusing on some of the challenges that we face, but This board needs to know that in the end, looking back a year, all's well that has ended well. The MTA has proved that we are a business-like organization that delivers for the customers, for the public, and that we are continuing to do that every day. The proof of that is what our riders are telling us, as reflected in the most recent spring customers count survey. This is one of the two large surveys that we do every year, and we got 70,000 people to respond. That's a big data group. And there's important news. Compared to last fall, customer satisfaction for subways has shown an 8% increase. Bus satisfaction is up 11% to 64%, with all boroughs showing double-digit increases. Tip of the hat to Demetrius and his team. Commuter railroad customer satisfaction is incredibly positive. Metro North is 89%. Wow. 81% at Long Island Railroad, and both are healthy gains over last fall, especially Long Island Railroad, which has surged 11 points. Way to go, Rob. We're also delivering for customers with respect to our other principal duty of the board as fiduciaries, which is, of course, to be good financial stewards of the public's money and to make sure that the MTA is financially stable so that we can continue to deliver for the riders. And we're doing amazingly well on that front as well. For starters, the MTA is virtually the only transit system of any size in the United States that isn't staring over the edge of the fiscal cliff. Our operating budget is not only balanced, and we thank the legislature and Governor Hochul for their leadership on that, but, and this is us, we are actually 3% down in budget terms from where we were before COVID. There's almost no other major agency that can say they're delivering more service and better service and also delivering it at 3% lower budget in real terms than before COVID. Now, we do have budget challenges looming in the out years, and you'll hear about them in the July financial plan that's going to be presented next month, where we go over the financial outlook, and it always needs to update. But Moody's decision this month to upgrade the MTA's rating from A2 to A2 from A3 is a huge vote of confidence in our financial stability and the financial management of this institution. It is a signal to investors, and we do need to borrow money so that we can fix the system and we can build all those elevators. It's a signal to investors that the MTA is a good credit risk, and it's going to make it easier to borrow that money to fund and maintain the system. So credit to Jay and to Kevin, our co-CFOs up to now, and it's no secret, it was announced on Monday that Jay is now stepping up to be the sole CFO, while Kevin is transitioning to a more limited role, but an important role as senior advisor focusing on capital markets. I was going to say let's have a hand for our amazing finance team, but you already did it. But really, thank you both. Kevin came out of retirement to help us through this amazingly challenging period, so I will call for a special hand for Kevin Willens. Listen, customers are voting with their feet, or should I say with their taps, because we're pushing 80% in the tap-and-go element of our fare payment system. In May 2025, we surpassed 112 million monthly rides on the subway. That's up from this time last year significantly, but it's important for this board to understand it's 80% more than January 2022 when this board first came together when I was confirmed by the state Senate. We're up 80% in a couple of years. We are delivering to a lot more people. The commuter railroads are also breaking records. Last Wednesday was the highest ever post-pandemic day on Metro North, almost 259,000 riders, and the Long Island Railroad carrying 7 million riders total in May, 88% of pre-COVID ridership. and the highest post-pandemic percentage yet. Rob, you really are attracting back a lot of people. We've got all that great service. Well done. I am so proud to say that these customers are also coming back, as I say, to better service, because at the end of the day, that's what matters most to the rider. Weekday subway on-time performance was 85.2%, the best performance ever outside the empty train days in the middle of COVID. The same story on the Long Island Railroad, 96.7%, the highest non-COVID May in recorded history. And then Metro North always comes in at their usual 98% plus. So we tend to overlook it, but it is an amazing track record. May was also a huge month for Paratransit, which saw increases of more than 17% in both trips and ridership. Customer satisfaction on Paratransit remains at 85%, an extraordinary level. It has been 85% or higher every month so far in 2025, which is a huge improvement from pre-COVID days. Meantime, service delivery for buses is 95%. We have a ways to go on that, and Demetrius and his team are working hard on it. But the Queens bus network redesign, I believe, is going to make everything better for riders. I'm just going to remind everybody that this launches on Sunday. Demetrius spoke at length at the committee meeting on Monday about what we can expect when we move into Queens bus redesign. We have a full, extraordinary, all-front, multi-front communication effort underway with passenger messaging, online, hard copy, and thousands of customer ambassadors who are out on the streets and on the buses talking to riders and making sure they know that this is coming very soon, and we want to make sure that people are aware of it and are able to, if they need to adjust which bus stop they go to, if they need to be unsurprised when the bus takes a slightly different route. It is all in the interest of this extraordinary 5-year effort to make Queens buses run faster. It's 800,000 people every day, the largest bus system on a county basis in the country, and we have to make it run faster. And since last June, we've also made progress on safety. Crime is down this year versus 2024 and down significantly since 2019, pre-COVID. We're down 8% versus 2019 before the pandemic. Now, there's more to be done, and we hear in those customer surveys from everybody, and I know it's a political issue, but we have to listen to our riders. They tell us they want to see cops in the system to make them feel safe and to make sure that they are safe. But altogether, it is clear that what we've done is making an impact. The 31,000 cameras that we have system-wide in stations and onboard train cars, total system coverage on the car fleet. It took us like 1.5 years since Governor Hochul challenged us, and we got it done. That was another accomplishment of New York City Transit that we all want to thank Demetrius and his team for getting done. We've installed LED lighting to make the stations brighter in half of all the stations, and we're ahead of schedule to meet our target, which is in mid-2026. We've got platform edge barriers with this new design, which is actually very popular with the customers, in 45 stations now. We're going to have it in 100 stations by the end of this year. And in those surveys, the riders are telling us, especially older riders and less frequent riders who we want to bring back to the system who may have been discouraged by what they were hearing about safety, they're telling us that these barriers make them feel much safer because they obviously can position themselves so there's no risk, God forbid, of someone putting anybody on the tracks. And we're getting serious about finding fare gates of the future that will help us to eliminate fare evasion as a problem and hopefully to diminish the need for police presence to deter fare evasion. This fall, we're testing 4 designs seen here at 20 stations. You're going to be able to go and check them out. They're all a little different. They're all going to be using the same validators, the tap-and-go system we have installed in the system right now. But moving on with the retrospective that I started with, 1 year on from the congestion pricing pause, which was obviously our most controversial initiative, congestion pricing is not only well underway, it's a massive success, and the validation of that initiative keeps pouring in. As I highlighted last month, the Times did a detailed breakdown about how the program is achieving all its goals for the central business district in terms of traffic reduction, increased travel speeds, safety, noise reduction, and more. Now, just this week, the Regional Plan Association released its own independent report highlighting how the improvements are actually spreading to the whole region outside the Manhattan CBD. Contrary to all the concerns we heard before the program was implemented, those areas outside Manhattan and outside the CBD are actually seeing less traffic. Traffic's down 10% in the Bronx, down 5% on Staten Island. Even Bergen County, New Jersey, down 14%. Congressman Gottheimer, you're welcome. And there's less traffic in Manhattan overall, not just within the CBD, but a 25% reduction in gridlock borough-wide. Challenges to the program in court are also evaporating. Everybody here is aware that Judge Lyman ruled a few weeks back that the Trump administration can't continue to threaten our federal funding while this litigation is playing out. The judge has now revised the schedule for the final adjudication of the whole dispute, so we're going to have a resolution months earlier than we thought. And last week, another judge, a state court judge, threw out the lawsuit brought by the town of Hempstead. Their lawyers initially didn't even show up to argue the motion to dismiss. They said it was, they were concerned about the traffic as they drove in, but we encouraged them to consider the Long Island Railroad right across from their office, but that's another story. But when they eventually did show up, Judge Engeron shut them down and quickly dismissed that pretty specious lawsuit. So with threats to congestion pricing diminishing, and I think that we're on this path to stay, it's time to turn our attention to the next capital plan. With CPRB action this past week, Albany has given its final approval, and we're moving full speed ahead. Over 60% of the projects are in process already, most of them in design, but some are already actually in procurement. In-house track work, we talked about the in-house work that we are growing as part of this program, which is both efficiency and cost savings, and also an opportunity to do some more in-house hiring. In-house track work is getting started. We're in design for 2 ADA packages for the subways and another for Metro North. And we're sourcing bids on the signal upgrades for the Liberty and Fulton lines on the A and the C. We got to get the entire length of the A and the C on CBTC. And now, because we have all those R211s coming, we're going to have enough CBTC-equipped rail cars to really serve the entire line. So we got to get that going. Now, under Jamie Torres Springer, C&D, MTA Construction Development has been developed into a well-tuned machine that knows how to mobilize. So don't forget what they've accomplished just in the last year, despite all the tumult with congestion pricing and otherwise. We have 9 new accessible ADA stations, 7 on the subway, 2 on the Long Island Railroad. We have major modernization and rehab projects on the G and the A lines that involve not just major construction, but a ton of public outreach and maintaining a complicated menu of alternative service, including massive shuttle bus operations, and the public gave us high marks for those. And C&D is also leading the switch to Omni. This was our first full year with kids using student Omni cards. We've sent out more than 1 million reduced fare cards, and amazingly, and not expected, the seniors and our reduced fare customers have quickly adapted to using Omni from switching from MetroCard, a great sign for the final phase of that. And while advancing projects being funded by congestion pricing, we've already awarded new contracts for dual-mode locomotives, battery electric buses, and some other big projects that are in procurement ready to be awarded this way. We got the Fulton, I talked about the Fulton and Liberty AC signal modernization. That's 43 miles of track. 2nd Avenue Subway Phase 2, we've got the major tunneling contract that we're going to receive bids on not too long from now. ADA packages are coming up for 5 stations, including Gates Avenue on the JZ in Brooklyn, and also the Bryant Park Station, which has been waiting for a good long while for some elevators. And we have another 18 stations funded by congestion pricing that are going to be coming very soon. And as we talked about on Monday, the commuter railroads are going to get a boost from the purchase of 300 new M9A cars made right here in New York State that are going to enter service in a couple of years. This has been a huge priority for us as the new capital plan includes massive investments in rolling stock, almost $11 billion worth of rolling stock. Everybody knows this. 40 years ago, when the capital program got going, they bought a lot of rail cars. Those rail cars are now breaking down much, much more frequently than the rest of the fleet. We have to replace them, or else the riders are going to be experiencing cars taken out of service. We don't want that. That's why we're buying all those new rail cars. Now, it's no secret that one of our biggest new challenges is a project we are not running and that we do not control, namely Amtrak's ongoing East River Tunnel rehab. Our team at MTA, we worked for a few years to try to convince Amtrak to do the project differently. They rejected our views. We've been trying now to hold the line, and Governor Hochul has stepped in as well, to get them at least to put in measures in place to protect Long Island Railroad riders during construction. They've done some of what we've demanded, but there are still issues, as reflected in the fact that on Monday, an Amtrak power failure at the start of the rush hour resulted in the closure of one of the 3 remaining tunnels. It's exactly the nightmare scenario. It was brief, it was remedied, but it's a reminder of the nightmare scenario that if you're down to 3 tunnels and something goes wrong, you're going to lose service in the rush. This was what Rob Free was pushing Amtrak on for weeks and weeks. Long Island Railroad had to cancel some trains and to divert others to Grand Central Madison. That is what we are not going to stop pushing back on, that kind of scenario. So we're going to keep holding Amtrak accountable, especially when it comes to staffing these sensitive interlockings and other areas where, if a signal misbehaves, you need to have someone right there to address it right away, or else you're going to lose access to Penn. And the staffing issue, we've been talking to them about staffing issue, it's especially hot button for us because they have done such a terrible job in supporting the work on Penn Access. Remember, that's the Hellgate line. It's an Amtrak-owned line. We're trying to turn it into a transit line for Metro North so that people, working-class neighborhoods like Parkchester and Co-op City can get access to jobs in Manhattan in half the time they now spend to commute, or for the first time to have meaningful mass transit access to jobs in Connecticut and Westchester. So we are really concerned about the way Amtrak has been shorting the work on Penn Access. And I've asked Jamie to report back to the board within the next couple months about the impact that failure to support the Penn Access work is having on the project schedule. Some creeping concern, and it's time for us to get into it at this board. I have to say, after 100 years of Amtrak and its predecessors flying through the Bronx without ever stopping, we are determined to give folks in the East Bronx, Co-op City, Parkchester, Morris Park, Hunts Point, real access to mass transit that doesn't require sitting an hour and a quarter on an express bus. We're not going to allow Amtrak's chronic dysfunction to keep us from making this happen in the near term. So, winding down, let me just say that no matter what's happening in the political world, whether it's in DC or here at the local level, our team is going to keep focusing on the substance. Some of this may be a little boring, but the bottom line, we're fighting for customers and we're fighting for New York. We're going to keep tackling the hard issues that, honestly, a lot of government, with all the rhetoric that flies around, the government is not so great at addressing forthrightly and aggressively. Sometimes it can feel overwhelming because there are so many hard issues that the MTA is facing. But that comes with the territory for this board and for everyone who works at the MTA. This board, have had to deal with not only the post-COVID recovery, a challenge in itself, but you also inherited a lot of challenges that our predecessors weren't able to address for whatever reason. State of good repair of this 100-plus-year-old priceless system, which is teetering and needs the investments that we have secured from Albany. The insufficient progress that was made on ADA accessibility in the first 30-plus years since accessibility became the law of the land. Antiquated bus networks, the creeping reality of fare evasion, which I do think is a threat to the economics and the viability of our system, the shortage of rolling stock, the urgency of dealing with new rolling stock, and so much more. We have to keep at these issues because the transit system is not only the lifeblood of our economy, it is where people form their opinions of this community, whether the city is working well, whether the region's working well. We're the aspect of government that the most people deal with every day. We owe it to New Yorkers to make it work well and feel like it's working well. So I'm proud to be for that. This group has been checking off items on our long to-do list left to us by our predecessors, and I'm excited for what the rest of the year holds. And I thank this board for your tremendous support through an amazingly challenging period of time. So with that, next item. Rachel, would you do a paratransit update?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair Lieber. Good morning, members of the board. My name is Rachel Cohen. For the past year, I've had the pleasure of serving as the Vice President for Access-Ride, New York City Transit's paratransit system. And I'm here this morning to talk a little bit about how we continue to deliver the biggest and the best paratransit service anywhere in the country, how the choices and the investments that our leadership team is making are leading to record-breaking ridership and performance month after month after month, and a little bit about what that means for our service going forward. Before that, just a minute of reminder and context on what paratransit is and specifically how we provide this service here in New York City. As folks are probably aware, we're required under the ADA to provide what's called complimentary paratransit service for customers who can't use the fixed route service due to a disability or health condition. Paratransit service, by its design, is origin to destination. Basically, it's a one-seat ride. And drivers are trained and required to provide assistance to customers as they use our service. That idea of being a complimentary transit service is critical and something I'm going to return to. It means we're required to run basically parallel to when and where our fixed route service runs. With the nature of our fixed route service here in New York City, we choose to run Access-Ride everywhere and anywhere in the 5 boroughs. There are no restrictions on geography and no changes to the service on nights, weekends, or holidays. We also charge the same fare for paratransit as we do for our fixed route service. Being a complimentary transit service also means that, just like our colleagues in subways and buses, we schedule our service ahead of time, and we group our trips together on shared rides and routes for efficiency. You won't find our schedule or our routes on the MTA app or website, but they're there. In fact, our team in Queens works every night to put together a bespoke schedule for the next day based on the customer ride requests that we've received. And that's why we need to know ahead of time where our customers are traveling so we can provide them the kind of reliable service that they need. And creating and sticking to that schedule here in New York City is no small feat. We're running by far the biggest paratransit service that there is. We have over 1,000 of our own dedicated vehicles, and we work with thousands of taxis and for-hire vehicles licensed by the TLC through our broker program. We have 180,000 customers who have been assessed and are eligible for our service, and we're now regularly scheduling more than 40,000 trips on weekdays, even on high heat days like today. That means that at Access-Ride, we're running a demand response service that's larger than the fixed route bus service in many cities around the country, places like Providence or Kansas City. We had more than 13 million riders served in 2024. That was a record, even looking back before COVID, and we're on track to break that record again in 2025. So what does a complimentary paratransit trip actually look like for one of our customers? On the screen is just an example of an illustrative trip. We'll call the customer Jim. He lives in College Point, and he's getting ready to travel tomorrow to a meeting for his job in Lower Manhattan. So for this trip, he'll go on Tuesday afternoon on the My AAR app, spend 30 to 45 seconds booking the trip, telling us when and where he needs to travel, and then he'll have confirmation his trip is scheduled. When he goes to travel on Wednesday, he'll be able to check the app or get a text from us letting us know his vehicle's on the way and when it'll be there. And when it arrives, the driver will get out and help him from the curb into the vehicle, and then they'll be on their way. Along the way to the customer's destination, it's likely they'll make 1 or 2 stops to pick up additional customers who are traveling generally in the same direction, though not to the exact same location. And then the customer gets dropped off at the curb exactly where they asked to go. Now, if this customer was taking a similar trip on fixed route service, he might go on the MTA app before the trip and look at Trip Planner, find accessible trip options, and then have a multi-leg trip using bus, subway, and walking to and from his destination. Depending on the details, right, every trip is different. The customer may spend a little more or less time on the vehicle, or more or less time walking or in those transfers on the different trip options. But on both routes, it involves some planning and accounting for travel time on the customer's behalf, and it involves the MTA on our side running a scheduled service so we can move lots of people reliably at the same time. And our paratransit customers tell us over and over again that timely, reliable service is their #1 priority. Coming out of the pandemic in 2021 and 2022, we were facing real challenges on service reliability. We had a shortage of drivers, an aging vehicle fleet, and stagnant technology systems. Wait times, no-shows, and complaints were high, and we certainly heard it from our customers. But in the last 3 years, we have really turned the service around. This MTA leadership team made a decision to make Paratransit its own independent department, separate from the Department of Buses and reporting directly to the New York City Transit president, and brought in a world-class transportation professional to lead Access-a-Ride. Under the leadership of Chris Pangolin, my predecessor, the Paratransit team identified every pain point along the customer journey. And since then, we've been going through one by one and knocking those pain points down with smart investments, policy decisions, and process changes that make our service more responsive, more reliable, and more customer-driven. We've done things like work with our broker partners to bring on thousands of new drivers with strategic incentives, making paratransit trips of choice for those TLC licensed and trained drivers. We've invested in modernizing our dedicated carrier fleet, and we're holding our vendors accountable for their performance. We rebuilt our app so that now it's truly the fastest and easiest way to book and track a paratransit trip. And finally, we changed the way that we run scripts, technology, and staffing in our call center so we can more quickly address the most urgent calls and book trips more quickly. And there's more to come. We're looking at technology tools to help broker drivers communicate around language barriers. And starting later this year, we will finally begin to build the new paratransit technology system that will replace our more than 20-year-old scheduling engine, unlocking greater efficiencies, improving customer service, and letting us better handle those dynamic changes on the day of service, some of which we heard about this morning at the podium. So we've probably all heard a story about an Access-a-Ride trip that went wrong, and no operation of this scale runs perfectly. We're always looking for ways to improve, but what you never hear about are the 95+% of the trips that go right every day. The simple fact is that, as a result of the decisions that we've made, every key performance indicator is up significantly since the pandemic. We've tightened our performance window so that we measure ourselves to a 20-minute on-time window instead of the traditional 30 minutes, and we meet it more than 90% of the time. Our OTP is more than 10 percentage points better than it was just a couple years ago, and in fact, we now pick up customers within 5 minutes of the promised time on almost 70% of our trips. So if you take that example of Jim earlier, if he asks to leave at 9 a.m., 7 out of 10 times he's picked up by 9:05. And when it comes to customer service, our performance indicators are equally strong. Between the use of the app and subscription trips, which are recurring trips that don't need to be booked every time, 1/3 of our trips are actually booked without a customer needing to call us at all. Those self-service options are great for the customer and they're great for us. That means we can allocate our call center hours to customers who really need help, whether it's booking a trip or on the day of service. We see the results of these investments in reductions in call time and hold time and a massive decrease in complaints. And customers are telling us with their feedback and their ridership choices that paratransit is working for them. The scores in our monthly pulse surveys are up more than 15% over just 2 years, and we're now seeing 80% of customers saying they're satisfied or very satisfied with our service. And 85% of customers are saying they're satisfied with their last trip, the statistic that Chair Lieber mentioned earlier. Now, this is not a marker of perfection, but it's certainly a marker of progress, particularly with a service of our size and complexity. And we're proud to be leading the way when it comes to customer satisfaction for New York City Transit. The quotes from our customers also give us all the same signals. They recognize the improvements, the level of service they're getting, and how critical Access-a-Ride is to this customer base. And ultimately, customers vote with their feet and with their fares. In 2024, we saw a 20% ridership increase year over year, and we're on a similar trend in 2025. That means that we're now providing 40% more service than we were at our pre-pandemic peaks. Customers are using paratransit and they're using it more. We're leading the way on ridership return across the MTA, and we're proud of these ridership records. We're getting people to work, to school, to recreation, and to appointments more reliably than ever before, so they're using our service to get to everything New York City has to offer. We're also keenly focused on the cost of providing service. Like every mode across the MTA, we're looking for efficiencies and savings opportunities. Over the course of the last decade, we've grown our broker program, so we now do the majority of our scheduled trips in TLC licensed vehicles. That means more efficient service for our customer and for the MTA's bottom line. Through technology and efficient use of our staff time, we've actually driven down the costs at our call center over the last year, even as ridership continues to grow significantly. We're holding our cost per trip steady, and we're looking for savings opportunities there as well as we get more efficient in how we make our schedules. But we need to be honest about the impacts of these trends. Providing reliable origin-to-destination service of this caliber is a costly proposition, and the burden of our growing expenses falls largely on the MTA's shoulders. Just as we've made huge strides on service reliability, we need to face the challenge of building a paratransit service model that is sustainable to meet the needs of our growing base of customers. As President Critchlow said in his comments to the Transit Committee, it's not the statistics, it's the people behind them and the customers that we serve. Good paratransit service is a good investment. Giving our customers reliable transportation options to go to work, school, and medical appointments and more pays dividends back to the City of New York. Our work over the last 3 years shows that we can deliver a paratransit service that provides the reliability our customers need and deserve. This turnaround story is a realization of the commitment of this MTA leadership team. No doubt there's more work to do to ensure paratransit continues to improve and for us to fulfill our broader vision of a fully accessible transit system. Just like we've demonstrated our commitment to subway and bus accessibility through investing in elevators and a modern fleet, we're investing in paratransit, and those investments are paying off. As we continue to grow and deliver great service, we also need our state leaders and our city partners to support this growth. As Disability Pride Month approaches, I am truly proud of the service we're working so hard to deliver every day, and thank my team for the tireless work they're putting in to make paratransit run day after day here in New York. I look forward to working alongside our legislative leaders and our city partners to ensure we have the support that we need to continue driving the service forward. Thank you.
I'll clap for that, as we all should. Amazing work. Congrats to you, Rachel, to Chris. Where's Chris? Chris Pangilinan, who has moved on to be the acting director of buses, but who set in motion so many of the improvements that you've just described. And most of all to Demetrius for amazing leadership that has brought us to a positive point. I'd invite any of the board to comment or question on the paratransit presentation. Anybody?
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add to something that Rachel was trying to say, this is Q.
Where?
If I could just add
The
to that.
shy Mr. Arroyo is recognized.
I just want to add a couple of points to what Rachel just said. Listen, when I first got here almost 5 years ago, as you heard from the podium earlier, paratransit was the redheaded stepchild of this operation, hidden in the bowels of the bus department. We've brought it up to equal footing to buses and subways, and we've seen all that light and air it's gotten, and we see how well it's grown, and we see the amazing work that we're now dedicating and what we're delivering to our most vulnerable New Yorkers who cannot ride the bus and the subway. As Rachel said, this is coming at a cost. We're seeing over 20% growth year over year, and that is not from new customers. That is from existing customers who like and appreciate the service so much that they're taking additional trips every day. That is a good thing. But as Rachel said, this is coming at a cost that the MTA is shuttering right now. We are carrying that cost, and in the outer years, we will not be able to continue to pay for this service on our own. So this is a call to every board member here to share our pride, the pride and joy that we have here at the MTA delivering this service. In the years to come, there will be a call. It'll come to you all, and it'll come to the advocates outside of the bullpen. Together, we're going to need you all to help us tell that story to legislators in Albany and to City Hall to help us with a better matrix so that we can continue to afford this level of service in the outer years. Thank you.
Anything else on the paratransit topic? Okay, because we have a tight quorum, I want to rush through the actions of the board, if that's okay with folks. We do have a quorum. I'm going to save the minutes to the end, Mr. Albert. Stay calm. But we're going to rush through the board business so we can take all the relevant actions. All right. So, Bridges and Tunnels Committee met Monday. No items to discuss. Railroads Committee is Mr. Herbst, I think.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. The railroads met jointly on Monday, and we report the following. There is one item for Long Island Railroad, a ratification for a total of $23 million. The committee recommends this item, and I move it.
May I have a second? Mr. Mack, second. All in favor? Any opposition or abstention? The item carries.
This concludes the Joint Railroad Committee report, Chairman.
Okay. New York City Transit, Ms. Mahaltzis.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. The New York City Transit Committee met Monday and reports the following. There is one ratification for $1.7 million. The committee discussed this item. However, quorum was not present. We bring this item to the full board for a vote.
Okay. Would you like to make a motion?
I make a motion.
Is there a second? Mr. Chu, thank you. All in favor? Any opposition or abstention? The item carries.
This concludes the New York City Transit report.
Thank you. Mr. Chu, Capital Program Committee meeting?
Chair, the Capital Program Committee met Monday and reports the following. Construction and Development has 5 actions for a proposed expenditure of $264.2 million. The committee recommends these items, and I move them.
That is the capital program in action. $264 million. Is there a second? Thank you, Ms. Soren. All in favor? Any opposition or abstention? The items carry. Staying with Board Member Chu about the Diversity Committee.
Chair, the Diversity Committee met Monday and has one policy, MTA All-Agency Military Benefits Policy for board approval. The committee recommends this item, and I move it.
Second. Thank you, Mr. Fleischer. All in favor? Any opposition or abstention? The policy item is approved. Finally, His Honor, Mr. Zuckerman on the Finance Committee.
Thank you, sir. I'll hold some other extraneous remarks for maybe later, but and I may do this out of order just because I know where there may be some debate. So let me just start with the Finance Committee met on Monday and reports the following. The June procurement agenda includes 5 actions for a combined estimated expenditure of $2.3 billion. The committee recommends these items, and I move them.
Second is Mahaltzis. All in favor of the procurement item?
Mr. Chair, I recuse from the first item, please.
Understood. The recusal was also registered at the committee meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition or abstention? The items carry.
Okay, there were 4
Real estate. Yeah,
there were
right.
4 transactional real estate items on behalf of Metro North, Long Island Railroad, and Bridges and Tunnels. The committee recommends these items, and I move them.
Second, Mr. Chu. All in favor of the transaction items? All in favor? Any opposition or abstention? The items carry.
Okay, let me break up the first 2 items in 2 pieces, please. I'd like to seek board approval to authorize action related to the payment of New York State assessment on the MTA and its constituent agencies for the Public Work Enforcement Fund for calendar year 2025. Let's take a vote on that. I move that item.
Okay, second. Thank you, Mr. Herbst. All in favor? Any opposition or abstention on the Public Work Enforcement Fund? That item carries. Second
then-
item.
Yeah, thank you. Then we have a board approval we seek for an update to the MTA advertising policy that was moved and discussed and voted on by the Finance Committee on Monday.
Okay, is there a motion?
I said I move it.
You move the item?
I second it.
There's a second, okay. Is there anybody who wishes to discuss the advertising policy? Okay, hearing none, we'll take the vote. All in favor of the
Aye.
changes to the advertising policy? Anybody registering opposition or abstention? Okay, the advertising policy item carries.
Okay, this concludes the Finance Committee report.
Okay. I think that, okay, now we'll circle back to board minutes. Looking at one particular board member, I say that the minutes of the May board meeting have been circulated, and we solicit comments and corrections. There were numerous typos, I am told. Go ahead, Mr. Albert.
There are over 25 corrections, so I can review it with our secretary afterwards, but it's as though it was written by AI. There's incomplete, there's incorrect, there's missing, there's duplicative words. Hayda's last name is misspelled in several places. I don't know how this happened.
Okay, all right. Mr. Albert will be escorted to an area where he can administer a spanking to someone or some other corrective action. But with that note, there will be, let me actually be serious. So you will make the corrections, but with those corrections and clarifications of the typo, there's nothing substantive, am I correct? Okay. So with those corrections, are the minutes approved? I'll make the motion. May I have a second? Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell. Any opposition or abstention? The minutes are approved. And with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Mr. Mack, thank you for the motion. Ms. Soren, thank you for the second. Any opposition or abstention? We are in adjournment. Thank you, everybody. Okay, and Mr. 1059, Bubby. What?
Because of him.
Notice the genius of doing a different order. Did you see that move?
Yes.
Because I thought there'd be a big debate on the advertising policy.
Sam, I'm glad to see you get some rest. We saw you on TV late last night. Oh, okay. All right, everybody be nice to Sam. I'm sure there are others in here who were up late last night. So everybody's talking about what happened yesterday, and maybe this group can communicate one as yet uncovered angle, which is Transit won yesterday. We got pro-transit, apparently Democratic nominee for mayor, Mark Levine, pro-transit, pro-congestion pricing, Borough President Hoylman Siegel, very pro-transit, supporter of the MTA in many, many different issues. Somebody we work closely with Albany, other borough presidents. It was good, you know. And as this, obviously, as the campaign continues and unfolds, we welcome all the discussion about transit that seems to be bubbling up. And good for the region and good for the transit system. So with that, Tim?
All right, you know the rules. If you get name checked, you go. So Samantha Liebman from New York won, who was apparently up late last night on TV. Sam.
Yeah, I didn't get home until 12:30 last night. So with the mayoral primary results, there's a real possibility that the next mayor will push for free buses. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm for, I mean, what Mamdani's introduced is like a lot of discussion about how to have more transit and more affordable transit and better transit, and he's been consistent on that. I think that's what I take away from it. I'm looking forward to other candidates joining him in that conversation, and we really welcome that.
And also, you know, usually we have the fare hike in August, but it doesn't seem like that is going to be the timing. Is there going to be a fare increase? And if so, when can we expect it?
Well, Sam, you're here with us throughout the year, so you know our budget included, as it regularly does every 2 years, a projection of a 4% fare hike, because that's the pattern that's been set since 2010. Because of the nature of the public process, and we're going to have the public process that we always do, it cannot and won't be in August, but we're going to initiate the public process, and it will happen in all probability, sometime later in the year.
All right, next up, Dave Colon from Streets Blog, right there in the center, Dave.
That's right, front and center. I do have a question for you about last night, Jana, but I wanted to start with something else, which is the electric bus program that you all talked about on Monday. The IAC report was kind of down on where things are at with it right now, not necessarily through any fault of your own, but I think that, they mentioned some of the issues around it, including Nova Bus isn't in the American market anymore, and it seems like you guys are maybe stuck with New Flyer. And I know you said you guys are working with, New York manufacturers who are trying to figure this out, but what is the future of it at this point in terms of how we're going to get buses that are going to work and actually provide service all day and aren't going to kind of be melting down on the road? I mean, do you have to find new manufacturers? Do you have to cajole people into becoming electric bus manufacturers in the American market?
Dave, you've hit on all the right issues. I mean, the bottom line is we're not going to buy buses that don't perform well and up to our standards and leave our customers stranded, period, end. But we are in the early stage of testing out these electric buses from New Flyer. We definitely need to do some more road testing and, work out the kinks and make sure our mechanics are fully conversant in all the details of how to maintain these buses. But the initial stats were a concern, and that's why Demetrius and the team called them out last week. So we're not going to buy buses that are going to hurt performance and leave our customers stranded. Does that mean in the long run? So in the long run, do we need more manufacturers? Absolutely. And we've been working with manufacturers both nationally and internationally. There are manufacturers in Eastern Europe, there are manufacturers elsewhere in the world to get them to come to the United States so they can qualify for Buy America requirements and then hopefully to come to New York State? Absolutely. But right now, we have a limited number of bus manufacturers in the country and also in New York State. So we're pushing forward to grow the number of manufacturers, grow the number of suppliers, make sure they meet MTA standards for performance in our environment. And in the meantime, we're going to try to shake out the buses from the companies that are available to us.
And then, you walked in, you said Transit One, and that's a good, top line, I think. And I would like to maybe invite you to put on your pundit hat, act like you're sitting on inside City Hall or something, a show they don't invite me on. And,
Sam,
Zoran was a candidate who really...
The Cologne show? Okay. Well.
I don't need the whole show. I just need, a segment. He really did center transit, and not just free buses, but he said fast buses, and he was seen on the subway a lot, and is known as kind of a transit rider. He worked with you guys a lot on your budget issues for a couple of years. I think that a lot of the conventional wisdom around the city for recently, last couple elections, had been transit riders aren't necessarily, people don't vote on the bus, they vote on other issues. Do you think that maybe this flies in the face of that? What does it mean to have somebody who goes fast and free buses and to, pull up a shock upset?
Well, I'd say two things. I don't know. We'll have to wait to see whether there are any detailed breakdowns of voter attitudes and motivations and so on. I'm sure there's some that are out there. But what I do see is two things that you referred to. One, New York has an incredibly dynamic and effective transit advocacy community. It's one thing that's different in New York than many other places. Transit advocacy groups have in some ways supplanted the old good government groups, and that's great for transit. And I also think that, honestly, the MTA, the progress that this MTA has made in improving service after the experience of the the 2017 summer of hell has also brought attention. Maybe the bad days, COVID, and the improvements that we've had maybe brought more attention. We certainly see a lot of coverage of transit. So I do think that voters are increasingly focused on it, but I'm going to defer to whatever analysis that goes on as we come out of this election.
All right, we're going to move to the Zoom equipment, sir. Arthur Chen from Fox 5 is sitting by there to ask a question. Arthur.
Hi, Tim. Thank you. And hello, Jano. I just have two quick questions. Yesterday, or the last couple of days, you guys have to deal with some record heat levels. How did the system do? What does that tell us for the rest of summer, since we're at the beginning of this? And then the other question, and it was touched on Monday in the committee meeting, but a lot of people are sort of spinning their heads in terms of how Omni has been billing them and concerned that they're getting billing notifications on days that they didn't ride. Can you just give an update on whether you feel like that's under control?
Sure.
Thank you.
So on the Omni question, number one is we have investigated every single claim that's come to our attention of people saying I was overcharged, and in every case, they weren't overcharged. What it is, and it's a legitimate concern that we are trying to get the contractors to correct, is a lag in billing, registering through people's credit cards and other payment media. And that's because of I won't say computer bugs, but the capacity of the computer system and, frankly, our banking system to process the huge number of people who have come on to Omni in, say, the last 6 or 7 months. But in fairness, the riders don't deserve to have that surprise when a lot of charges show up on their accounts. And we are very much and aggressively pushing the contractor, Cubic, to expand the computer capacity and to correct that so riders don't have that experience. In the meantime, we've done, Arthur, I think a pretty good job of customer service, helping people to see their trip history so they don't believe they've been overcharged, which is now back in action. And also, we've been answering people's calls. The wait times on our call center have been pretty solid. under a couple minutes. So we think we're addressing it, but we're going to try to make sure that customers don't have that experience in the future.
Okay.
And the first question was, Arthur, I want to. Oh, how do we perform in the heat? How do we perform in the heat? Big picture, pretty well. We had two electric power issues on the subway that were mostly Con Ed related. We did have some impacts from the heat in a couple of cases, but our overall system worked really well. The Long Island Railroad, on top of the subways, ran 944 out of their 948 trains yesterday. Our buses ran and overall performed pretty well. We had, again, we check every car that before it goes out into service on the subway, and we had only 15 cars identified as having non-functioning air conditioning. Doesn't mean it wasn't a little hot when you got in, because the doors keep opening in those 100-degree stations, which means the air conditioning doesn't always fully offset it. But the air conditioning was working, and we check at every terminal to make sure. So overall, the fact that we delivered as much service as we did and effectively, I was satisfied.
All right, we're going to stick with Zoom just for a moment. Caroline Spivak is standing by from Cranes, New York Business. Caroline.
Hi, Jano. How you doing?
Good.
I have a question that's both for you and Demetrius. So earlier this month, the legislature passed a bill that would require conductors on trains, on subway trains. So this would effectively end the practice of one-person train operation in the capacity that the MTA already conducts it. If it becomes law, I understand that's on G&M trains on the weekends and on some shuttles. So my question for you is this something that the lawmakers consulted New York City Transit on? What's the positioning what's the position, the thinking on something like this for the MTA in practice? And, how would this affect the MTA's operations and spending on labor costs if this becomes law?
Well, one of the challenges that we face is after they're done with the budget, frequently the legislature passes bills that have huge price tags. In Washington terms, would be called unfunded mandates. I don't know what the specific cost of this would be, but it would be, it would be substantial. So we'll study it. I also generally, Caroline, say I don't like it. We have negotiated this as part of our collective bargaining agreement, and the idea of the legislature, which says they support collective bargaining, intervening in a an issue that has been resolved in collective bargaining, and putting a thumb on the scale seems not a great strategy to me in general if you're interested in maintaining an effective collective bargaining process. So that's another question I would have. But we have not yet really studied. There were so many bills that came out of the legislature in the middle of the night in the last few weeks. We haven't yet formally identified a position on this stuff.
All right, let's go to Evan Simcoe Bednarski right here, standing by at the world headquarters of the MTA from the Daily News. Evan.
Hey, Jana. I hope you'll allow me two questions as well. First, kind of build off of Dave's question about buses. The single largest part of your next 5 years of capital spending is rolling stock, and in both the case of electric buses, but also the M9As, and there's not a whole lot of manufacturers. That's, you guys have talked about this quite a bit. Is the expenditure, is the investment in rolling stock that you've laid out in the capital plan realistic and doable, given that you've got two folks who can make heavy rail, functionally? You've got, one group of people who might be able to make an electric bus. How do you take this investment and move it forward just practically, given that landscape?
You're not wrong. I mean, I've talked about it from this podium a couple times that we want to grow the competition, and we think it makes sense to have it in New York State, which is historically, as Tim Mulligan laid out on Friday, a leader in railcar and rolling stock manufacturing. and we buy, I think we own more than half of all the commuter rail cars in the United States. Some crazy number like that. But so they should come to New York. They should, they should set up shop. And we're doing everything in our power to attract them. We are working with several companies that make rail cars, that make buses, and talking to them about both the funding that we have in the new capital program and how to do business with the MTA and trying to incentivize them to get big in it. We do see some opportunities. Siemens has developed railcar manufacturing capacity, although not exactly what we're looking for right now in I think it's in Horseheads, New York. There are other railcar manufacturers who have been, scoping different locations, and we're going to try to encourage them because you're right. We need more competition in order to have a successful ecosystem for buying and putting into service all that railing stock.
Thank you. And then earlier this month, there was the transformer fire at Grand Central Madison. That was a fairly new transformer. Do you guys have any sense at this point as to what happened? Was this just a lemon, or is there some sort of potential larger problem?
Rob, do you have an early? No, it's still under investigation. We'll try to give you feedback when we have it.
Thank you.
All right, we're moving on the Zoom. One last questioner is Mike Mateo from the Staten Island Advance. Mike.
Hi, everybody. Just to Arthur's question earlier, we saw between yesterday and today that there were several express bus trips canceled for the morning commute on Staten Island. We also saw that as of this morning, there were service advisories on more than 20 of the local and limited service bus routes here on the island. So just wanted to ask if that was air conditioning related, if there were other problems, and if there was any update that you guys can give on it.
That's Demetrius to come and give you some details.
So I'll say overall, Transit has looked at the performance of Staten Island, our ability to keep buses in service, put buses out, and we do feel like there's opportunity for us to do better. So, there are, this week, Monday and Tuesday, we had a higher number of buses that were out as a result of air conditioning issues. When it's 100 degrees out, you can expect that the number will increase to some extent. So we had roughly 4.3% of buses out on Monday, Tuesday, but Staten Island wasn't any higher than the rest of the system, and which is generally less than 1%. But I can tell you that the team is laser focused on coming up with some real ways to improve our both express and local service within Staten Island. And we think there's an opportunity to do that. We have the team looking at it right now.
All right, from Staten Island to Long Island, there's Newsday's Alfonso Castillo. Alfonso.
Hear me? Okay, great. Couple questions. You mentioned the customer satisfaction survey on Long Island Railroad, 81%. I believe that is the first time they've returned to 81% since Grand Central Madison opened, and obviously there was a fall off in customer satisfaction right after it opened. Can you talk about the significance of now being back to pre-Grand Central Madison levels? Does it suggest that riders have finally come to accept the new Long Island Railroad?
I mean, and listen, I think, Alfonso, honestly, you're answering your own question. I think it took a while for people to get accustomed to the new pattern of service, where there is definitely more switching, mostly in Jamaica, but there's a lot more service as a result of both the availability of Grand Central Madison and the way that the whole system has been reconfigured and expanded. So, listen, the success of increased ridership, dramatically increased ridership, record ridership, very high on-time performance. We talked about that at some length, and high customer satisfaction. All those things go together. I don't think that it's anything other than the basics, which is delivering for customers, and the customers are telling us they're more satisfied, and that's where we want to be. Rob, do you have anything you want to add to that? Okay.
A different topic, Kathy, on Monday.
I would just say one other thing, which is you were there for the whole thing and covered it, but the projections about the split in ridership preference between Penn and Grand Central and Atlantic and so on have all come to pass. And a little tip of the hat to our planners who projected eventually it would be roughly 60-40 split in Manhattan. And when everything settled down, that's where it's turned out. So, it wasn't always a straight line, but the planning turned out to have been pretty accurate.
On the topic of toll evasion and unbillable tolls, Kathy on Monday gave a lot of figures about all of the increased efforts in policing toll evasion. I saw 2024 numbers for unbillable tolls, and they are essentially unchanged from 2023 as far as how many unbillable transactions there are. What does that say? Does it suggest that these efforts aren't working? Does it say that these numbers would be a lot worse were it not for those efforts?
Honestly, I welcome Kathy to the podium if she wants to talk about it. But listen, we're going to stay on. The goal is to make sure that the rest of the ridership feels like this is a fair system. And if there are people who are evading the toll, whether it's by having a ghost plate, which is frequently used in crime, according to the NYPD and other law enforcement organizations, or by intentionally concealing a plate or other shenanigans, we want them to know that we're going to come after. Irrespective of how the bottom line implications, we're going to keep pushing. Kathy?
So I think when you look at the trends over a longer period of time, right? So coming out of COVID in 2021, that was when it was rising exponentially. When you look at the trends since 2021, they've essentially been flat or slightly down. So the efforts of the enforcement are working. Otherwise, that trend would continue just, straight up.
Thank you. And Alfonso, I hope you'll report on the numbers which Kathy and we can provide about literally the scores of these region-wide enforcement actions and how many people have gotten summonsed and had their cars seized and even some arrested because they had other outstanding warrants on them. This is a serious law enforcement operation, and we think it's arresting a trend that was very troubling.
All right, let's close the proceedings with Ramsey Khalifa of Gothamist and WNYC.
Hey, Jano. So should there be a fare hike proposal, let's say, in next month's board meeting with the public comment period? Let's say riders might expect that fare increase happen later in the year, later in the fall. That kind of aligns with, the sunsetting of the MetroCard, although not fully. Can you just talk about the next phase of Omni, how that will be possible, I guess, with a higher fare per tap, what that means for the weekly limits, and then also what future discounts or perks riders could see once we're exclusively on Omni with a higher fare rate?
Well, look, Ramsey, for me to talk about exactly how the fare will be configured would be totally premature because we haven't run that through the board. Before we go to the public, we have to, sort of get a go-ahead of some kind from the board. But you're right about one thing, which is that once we're fully on tap and go, we have the ability to do things with fares that are really not easy to do now, where you still have people dumping, 25 coins in a coin on bus or otherwise. So we have much more adaptability of fare policy once we're fully in tap and go, and that's one of the things we're looking forward to. Exactly how that is used is going to be a board decision. Fare policy is always a board decision, but we're looking forward to that time. Jesse, is there anything else you want to say on that? Okay, thanks. That's it.
All right, thank you, Jano, Rob, Demetrius, and Kathy, and have a great afternoon from Lower Manhattan.
All right, I'm always guilty of forgetting one thing. Just please make sure that everybody that you guys write for and televise to and speak to on radio, a reminder, the Queens Bus Network redesign starting this weekend, starting on Sunday. And it's super important, and in fairness to people, there's been enormous amount of work done. And there's a ton of opportunity to speed bus travel in Queens, with the most bus-dependent part of our entire region, the entire country. Let's make sure people know this is happening. We have a ton of MTA assets out there and communications and ambassadors out there, but we need the help of the transit press to also make sure that folks are aware, so it goes well. So thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.